Hey, this is Paul Harris, and I want to share 3 things that everyone should know about overcommitment. Let's talk about the first one. You should be committed to something. 1 Corinthians 12 talks about how we're given special abilities as believers. The gifts of the Spirit is what we call them. And within those gifts of the Spirit, there's so many abilities and talents that flow out of those gifts. And so, of course, we're all supposed to be doing something, committing to some things. I think a lot of times what happens is we're ambitious, or we feel like we need to be part of a lot of different things to feel like we're actually doing stuff. And so the first thing that I want to make, the point that I want to make is that yes, you do need to be committed to something. You should be using the gifts of the Spirit, flowing through the fruits of the Spirit. You were created with purpose, on purpose. You have unique gifts, and honestly, what you bring, no one else can bring. You know, there may be similarities, but they can't be exactly who you are. You were created with purpose, on purpose. Your family needs you. Let's talk about the family a little bit and just the commitment that we have. So if you're married, if you have a wife and kids, or a husband and kids, that's your first priority. That's your first commitment. And so when we talk about peeling away some of the commitments that we have so that we're not overcommitted, family is not an option when it comes to peeling those things away. You've committed to them. And you know, 1 Timothy 3:5 says that if a man can't manage his own household, he doesn't need to be managing the house of God or the people of God. So I think to me that just speaks about how we really need to make a priority that once we've made the commitment to a family, they are the number one commitment when it comes to our service and our ministry. And so if anything that you're doing is causing division or issues at home, you may have said yes to the wrong thing. So I just pray that we always consider who we are in our home when it comes to ministry before we start considering who we are outside of the home. Trust me, in my life, I've had issues with that. It's something that the Lord has definitely worked on me and helped me to overcome, learning that saying yes to these things sometimes pull me away from my family. And I think it's important that once we make a commitment to have a spouse and children, we can't leave them on the side while we're out doing God's work. You know, your friends are another group of people that need you to be committed. They need you to be who you are and live out the dreams and the gifts that God's given you, because those people. I don't believe in coincidences. So those people are in your life for a reason, and you're in their life for a reason. So when we overcommit, sometimes it pulls us away from the people that we're supposed to be with because we don't have time for them anymore, because we've committed to so many things that takes us out of being used in those opportunities. So, you know, your family, your friends, your co-workers, that's another thing. You know, it's just being the example and the light and who you are called to be when it comes to your relationship with Jesus. And really everyone you encounter. You know, everyone you encounter, I don't believe in coincidences. So when you run into a stranger, they're there for a reason. Like, what is the gift in you? What are the special abilities that you have in the Spirit flowing out of the fruits? What are those special abilities that you have that stranger needs? It's not on accident that person crossed your path. How are we going to be Jesus to them? By committing to the things that He is calling us to commit to, and not committing to the things that He's not asking us to commit to. And that leads me to point number 2. Though you are called to do some things, like we said in point number 1, number 2 is that you aren't called to do everything. I think that so many times I've seen myself in the past, and I've seen people that I know, friends of mine, strangers, who've stretched themselves so thin saying yes to everything that they're asked to do. It's just not the Jesus way. You know, Matthew 11:30 says that His yoke is easy and His burden is light. And so I just, lately I've been trying to run it through that filter. Like, if there's all these commitments that I need, or I feel like I need to be part of, is it light and easy? You know, is it light and easy? And if it's not light and easy, I have to reconsider if this is really what the Lord's asking me to do, because His yoke is easy and His burden is light. Yes, there's things He's asking us to do, but it needs to fall in line with what He's called us to do. And so, again, sometimes you just have to say, no, this isn't what I'm going to do today, especially when it causes you to neglect your family, or maybe possibly causes you to neglect what you're supposed to be doing. You know, I'd even go as far to say that if you are saying yes to the wrong thing, that you actually may be robbing someone else of the opportunity to be used. Because again, you have special giftings and special abilities. Back to 1 Corinthians 12, there's things in you that you were created to do, and by all means, absolutely say yes to those things. If the Lord is calling you into something and He's gifted you and given you the abilities and the talents to do those things, you should do them. But if it's not something that you feel called to do, you should avoid it, because if you take that responsibility, you might be taking it away from the person who is called to do that. Actually, you are taking it away from them, because now you're doing it. So, everybody has its part. It has its purpose. That's what 1 Corinthians talks about. If you're an eye, why would you take on the responsibility of an ear? Maybe you're a high capacity multitasker and you can do a lot of stuff. I identify with that a little bit. There's a lot of things that I feel like that I'm good at, but being good and being right are two different things. If the Lord called me to do something, then I should do it. But just because I'm good at something doesn't mean that I'm called to do it. Again, why would an eye be an ear? If you decide to be the ear, you may be robbing the ear, if you will, from the opportunity to serve the body. So it's very important that you only do the things that you feel the Lord's called you to do. And really, the third thing that I want to talk about is that when you say yes to the wrong thing, you actually are saying no to the right thing. We only have so much time to do what we can do within a day. And so if you overcommit and you commit to things that you're really not called to do and you're really not empowered to do, you just do them because someone needs to get on it, you actually are missing out on what it is that God really has for you to do. So again, when you say yes to the wrong thing, you're saying no to the right thing. God has plans for you. Jeremiah 29:11, He created us He had the plans in mind when He created us. We don't want to commit to things that are the wrong thing, because we don't leave space for the right thing. We don't leave space for the actual plans that God has for us. We don't leave space for the dreams that He's placed in our heart. Follow me on this. What if when we committed our talents to the wrong thing, we're actually burying our talents? By committing them in the wrong spot, we're burying them. We all know the parable of the servant who buried the talents, Matthew 25:14 through 30. You can read that story about the talents. There was the couple of guys who doubled what was given. They put them in the right spot. They invested those talents in the right place, and it brought a profit. It brought increase. But there was the one that just buried it. He put it in the wrong place, and it yielded there was no benefit. And I think that I feel like that putting your talents in the wrong space, like using your talents for something that you're not really called to do, that you weren't really empowered to do, that you don't have the special abilities, the gifts of the Spirit to do, you are in essence burying your talent. You're investing it in the wrong thing, and there won't be a return. Typically, the return on that is going home tired and wishing that you didn't have to. And honestly, you don't have to. You can say no. So I want you to think of it that way. If I'm doing things that I am not called to do, if I'm committing to things that aren't the right thing, even if they're good, they're not the right thing, you might be burying the talents that you have and as you invest them in the wrong thing. And that's not what we want to do. We want to invest our talents and our abilities and the gifts from God into the things that we're supposed to invest them in, so that He can bless them and multiply them to do His work. It's nothing about us. It's about His work being done, bringing His kingdom to earth. Now you might say, Paul, thanks for the heads up. Thanks for telling me what I already know, or thanks for telling me what I don't need to be doing, but what do I do about it? How do I know when to say no? Like, how do I decide what to say yes to, what to say no to? And I think that a very important part of that, and one way I would answer that question, is you got to know your gifts. Like, what are your gifts? What are your special abilities? What has God empowered you to do? If you don't know what your gifts are, it might be difficult for you to decide what to say yes to. But one thing that I always think about is, like, what are you passionate about? Like, what is it that when you talk about it, your eyes well up with tears and your heart starts pounding because you're so passionate about it? Like, I would say filter the things that you do through the passions that you have in your heart, because I do believe that the plans that He created in us before we were born, the plans He had for us to do His good work, those are realized as the dreams of our heart. His plans become our dreams. And so I want to encourage you to just focus on that. Like, what is it that I get passionate about? When I think about it, or when I read the word, what parts get me most pumped up? I would encourage you to follow that path when it comes to deciding when to say yes and when to say no. I would also tell you that if you're committing yourself to ministry and it's taking you away from your family, if it's causing division at home, if it's causing issues at home, if you're skipping out on your family to spend time with your ministry, you need to reevaluate. Some people may say, oh, you got to forsake your family. You got to follow God no matter what. I'm going to tell you now, the Lord isn't going to ask you to leave your family at home in ruins while you go travel the world in the name of ministry. What is it that he can do through your family? Because once you've committed, again, to your family, you are now one with your spouse. You are one. You are a unit. So you got to work together. There was times in my life where I left my family at home and in the name of ministry, and I did my own thing, and I felt like that this is just how it is. I'm called to do this. So so sorry that you're not part of it, but I'll see you when I get back. And almost lost my family because of that. So I want to encourage you, especially husbands. I mean, this is for everyone, but I'm a man, I'm a husband, I'm a dad, and my heart is to grow our relationship and to encourage you to be the spiritual leader in your home. And that comes to, it's God first, and then it's your family, and then ministry. Ministry doesn't equate God. Ministry is the work that you're doing for him, and it starts in your home. It starts right here. The Great Commission started at home. And so I'm going to encourage you, don't forget that. Something else, when I was talking about spiritual gifts, like maybe you don't even know, you're like, Paul, I don't even know what my spiritual gifts are. And if you don't know what they are, there are some tests, online tests that you can take. They're just questions, and it kind of says, hey, based on your answers, here's what we say your spiritual gifts are, or talents. It's kind of a broader assessment. There are some free ones online that I will put in the description below, some links to those, but also your church may even have a spiritual gifts assessment test. But I would encourage you, take a spiritual gifts assessment. It's interesting what you might find. There's a lot of things inside of me that I know are there, but I didn't know how to talk about them. I didn't know how to recognize them really and what their purpose was until I took the spiritual assessments test. And then I said, wait, that's why I feel that way. Oh, that's why I think that way, because these feelings are based on the gifts that the Lord's given me, the gifts and the special abilities and the talents that we don't want to bury. So again, in the description below, they'll be in there. So if you want to take a spiritual assessments test and just get an idea of where you're at, I'd love for you to comment on what your spiritual gifts are. That'd be pretty awesome and pretty cool. Something else that another way to know when to say no is check your motivation. And then check the motivation of the people who are asking you to serve or to commit. If you're saying yes because it makes you feel good, or it makes you feel proud, or you're like, oh, I'm doing one more thing, I'm doing so much for the kingdom, I'm so committed, that's probably the wrong reason. Like if you're getting any kind of, I'm sorry, but just if you're feeling, if there's any feelings of pride when it comes to your service, honestly, you're probably you need to reassess how you're doing it and what you're doing. Again, this steps on my toes too. This isn't just about you guys. It's about me too. These are things that I have to work on. I have to ask myself, what are my motivations? Am I trying to be seen, or do I want to store up my treasures in heaven? It's something that I have to ask myself constantly whenever I'm doing stuff. Even right now, as I do this video, like what's my motivation? And I hope that my motivation is to share with you the journey that I'm on right now. Also another thing is you don't want to say yes because of guilt. Like I can't say no. My pastor asked me to do this. The Sunday school, teacher asked me to do this. Whatever. If you're not called to do it, you can say no. Because sometimes people just ask because they know you're reliable. They know you're somebody who will serve, and they're just looking for somebody to serve. But I can promise you that if your leadership searches their heart, they really only want you committed to the things that the Lord's called you to do. It's up to you to say, no, that's not what I'm called to do. My wife and I, after we went through a really rough time, and when we came out of that, I decided I was only going to do ministry with her for a while, and we did that for, 4 or 5 years, and what I learned was that I'm not called to be a first grade Sunday school teacher, but I did it in service with my wife because I wanted to reestablish the unity of our service together. But if my youth pastor or my children's pastor asked me now to teach first grade Sunday school, I would be like, bro, I can't do it. I'm just no good at that. I mean, I love kids, but I can't do it. I can't teach them. But again, it took me doing it to learn that. So if you're feeling guilty about saying no, that's the wrong motivation to say yes. That's just not Jesus. He's not going to guilt you into serving him. It's not his way. We serve because we're called to serve. We serve because we're equipped to serve. We serve because we want to be who he created us to be. When you overcommit, you actually sabotage your ability to have the impact you were designed to have on this community, on your community. You sabotage your ability to have the impact that you should have on your community. So you always want to commit to the right things and don't overcommit just because. My prayer is that you'll be who you were called to be and that you'll know who exactly that is. And you'll know that being you and who you're called to be is exactly enough. God doesn't need you to be more than that. He created you specifically with these things in mind. He created you with purpose, on purpose. If you've heard anything that resonated with you today, I'd love for you to just click the subscribe button and keep up with my videos. God bless you, and I am praying that you become everything he's called you to be, and praying that you do everything that he's called you to do. God bless you.